They say a single moment can split your life into before and after. I never bought into that kind of melodrama. Life felt more like a slow erosion, a gradual wearing down, until our 12th anniversary dinner. 12 years. That's how long Dana and I had been married. I'd booked La Mer Rouge, the same place I proposed. White linens, flickering candles, the clink of silverware against porcelain, soft jazz weaving through muted conversations. She always loved the manufactured elegance of it. Her name is Dana. And for most of those 12 years, I genuinely believed she loved me back. Maybe not with the fire of the early days, but with the steady warmth of shared history. I wore the blue button-down she once complimented years ago, calling it her favorite. A sentimental gesture, I suppose. Dana wore a black satin dress, simple but lethal, the kind that made men's eyes linger and women subtly adjust their own posture. She looked incredible. When we walked in, heads turned. It felt good, that fleeting moment of reflected admiration. Maybe a little distant between us, sure, but couples go through phases, right? That's what I told myself. She smiled across the table, her fingers cool as they brushed mine. Still handsome for a guy pushing 40, she teased, that familiar sarcastic edge softening the compliment. I laughed, playing my part. Dinner was perfect. On the surface. Steak for me, medium rare. Halibut for her. A respectable bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon we both agreed on. We talked about work, about a planned vacation we'd likely never take, about the neighbor's annoying dog. Small talk. The currency of couples who have run out of bigger things to say. Then, just before dessert, I made my move. A dumb, hopeful gesture. I stood, leaned down, kissed her cheek. Her skin smelled faintly of vanilla and something expensive. Going to settle the bill, I murmured. I wanted to surprise her. Earlier, I'd slipped the waiter a 20 and asked him to add a handwritten note to the receipt. Here's to many more. Cheesy, I know, but I thought it might spark something, make her smile genuinely. God, I wish I'd just stayed put. Walking back from the maitre d' stand, check settled, I slowed near the high-backed booth behind ours. I was just waiting for a server carrying a tray to pass, didn't want to collide. That's when I heard it. Her laugh. Not the polite chuckle she gave me, or the wry giggle she used with friends. This was different, fuller, freer, dangerously flirtatious. My blood went cold before the words even registered. You know, she said, her voice honeyed, conspiratorial. If he ever found out, I think he'd just quietly leave. He's not the kind to explode. He'd probably just pack a bag and disappear. Silence. Not an empty silence, but one thick with shared understanding. Then more laughter. Not just hers. A man's laugh this time. Deep, confident, and unsettlingly familiar. That's what makes it easier, babe, the male voice replied, smooth and condescending. You married a puppy, not a wolf. Puppy. The word hit me like a physical blow. My lungs seized. The floor seemed to tilt. My brain scrambled, desperately trying to reframe it, rationalize it. Misheard, joking, talking about someone else, a movie plot. But denial shattered against the next thing she said, delivered with the casual indifference of ordering another glass of wine. This will be the last anniversary I fake. Something inside me didn't just break, it atomized, turned to dust. I didn't storm back to the table. I didn't confront them. I stood there, hidden by the booth's partition, numb, watching the reflection of our flickering candle dance in the polished wood. My own face, pale and slack-jawed, stared back like a stranger's. I took a deep, ragged breath, smoothed my non-existent tie, turned slowly, and walked back to our table as if I'd simply been admiring the decor. Dana was mid-sip of water when I sat down, the candlelight catching the curve of her neck. Everything okay? She asked, that charming, practiced smile back in place. Her eyes, though, held a flicker of something. Curiosity? Impatience? Perfect, I managed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Just perfect. I lied. I didn't confront her, didn't ask, didn't break down. Not that night. I watched her eat her crème brûlée, tapping the caramelized sugar with the back of her spoon. Watched her thank the server with effortless grace. Watched her fix her lipstick in the ornate mirror by the exit, checking her reflection, oblivious to the wreckage she'd just made of mine. The whole time, a single question hammered in my skull. Who was he? I replayed the voice, the confident cadence, the smug familiarity. It wasn't a stranger. That voice had history. My mind raced, a Rolodex of betrayal spinning through friends, neighbors, colleagues, even distant relatives. The possibilities were sickening. That night, after Dana drifted off to sleep beside me, her breathing even, untroubled, I went into the master bathroom and just sat on the cold tile floor for hours. The moonlight slanted through the window, striping the floor like prison bars. Phone heavy in my hand, screen dark. Did I want to know the truth? Or did the overheard fragments already tell me everything essential? I decided then. I wouldn't just know. I would understand. Every detail, every lie. Not with yelling or tears, with cold, hard proof. And what I found, I sensed even then, wouldn't just change my life. It would change me. The next morning was an excruciating masterclass in pretending. Dana hummed in the kitchen, a picture of domestic normality. Coffee brewed, sourdough toasted, the scent filling the air like a mockery. Eggs? She asked brightly, turning from the stove, spatula in hand. I looked at her, the familiar curve of her cheek, the way her hair caught the light, and felt nothing but a vast, echoing emptiness. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. No thanks, I said, my voice tight, skipping breakfast, running late for work. I grabbed my briefcase and left 20 minutes earlier than usual. I didn't go straight to the office. I sat in my car around the corner, hands strangling the steering wheel, the pulse in my throat hammering against my collar. It wasn't just anger anymore, though there was plenty of that, simmering beneath the surface. It was a chilling sense of unraveling, but not into hysterics. Something colder, sharper. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense, slashed tires or angry voicemails. I didn't want drama. I wanted the unvarnished truth, the complete architecture of her deceit. Then, I'd decide. That's when I thought of Kevin, college buddy. We'd navigated coding classes and cheap beer together. Now he ran a successful cybersecurity firm, the kind that dealt with discrete problems for corporations and paranoid spouses. He'd always had a knack for the sneaky stuff. I called him. Kev, got time for coffee later? Need to ask you about something personal. Sure, man, everything all right? His voice held cautious concern. We'll see, I said. Meet me at the Daily Grind, noon. We met at the noisy cafe, halfway between our offices. I didn't waste time. I think Dana's cheating, I said, keeping my voice low, steady. I need proof, quietly. Kevin didn't flinch, didn't pry with awkward questions. He just nodded slowly, stirring his cappuccino. You want eyes or ears? Both, I replied. But strictly legal boundaries, Kev. I'm not looking to end up in jail over this. I just need to know what I'm dealing with. He gave a faint, knowing smile. There are ways, legal-ish ways mostly. Depends on plausible deniability. That afternoon, I met him again briefly and handed over one of our old household tablets, for the kids, we'd said, though we had none, and a spare smartphone I'd kept after my last upgrade. Kevin explained he could install sophisticated, near-invisible tracking and monitoring software. He could link the devices, allowing me remote access to GPS locations, certain call logs, text messages, even ambient audio if the device was active nearby, all synced to a secure portal only I could access. Planting it would be my job. A knot tightened in my stomach. This felt like a profound violation, crossing a line I never thought I'd approach. But then, I heard her voice again in my head. This will be the last anniversary I fake. Puppy, not a wolf. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about contempt. My hesitation evaporated. By the weekend, the tools were in place. I slipped the old phone, wiped clean but for Kevin's software, into the bottom of her gym bag, plugged into a portable charger. The tablet found a new home tucked under the passenger seat of her car, connected to the car's USB port for constant power. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my routine. I just watched, virtually. And what I started seeing felt like watching a different life unfold, superimposed over the one I thought we shared. It began subtly. Encrypted messages on secure apps exchanged at odd hours with a contact simply labeled M. Calendar entries for Pilates advanced session on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, times when her usual studio was closed. A GPS ping from her car, stationary for 2 hours at the parking garage of the downtown Marriott on a Wednesday afternoon when she was supposedly at a client strategy meeting. Then came the payload. A forwarded email accidentally synced to the tablet from her personal account. Attached were scanned receipts for a 2-person couples renewal spa package at a lakeside resort 3 hours away, a place I'd never heard of. Billed to her personal credit card 2 months prior, one name on the second package, Mark Lindley. Mark Lindley. The name slammed into me like a physical force, stealing my breath. Mark had been my boss for 4 years at my previous firm. A mentor figure, older, charismatic. I'd helped him navigate a messy divorce, listened to his woes over countless after-work beers. We'd done BBQs at his place. He'd sat at our dinner table, laughing, eating my food, charming Dana. That was the voice from the restaurant booth. Confident, familiar, deeply, sickeningly condescending. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, watching Dana scroll through her phone, a faint smirk playing on her lips as she read something. The urge to snatch the device, to smash it against the wall, was immense, a physical pressure building in my chest. But I didn't. I breathed through it. I wasn't going to react impulsively. I was going to prepare. So I began my own quiet campaign, strategic, methodical. I created a new, heavily encrypted folder in a secure cloud storage account, labeling it something utterly mundane. Tax Prep Archive, 2021. Inside, I meticulously saved everything. Screenshots of incriminating texts and app messages, detailed GPS logs mapping her deviations from her stated schedules, the spa receipt email trail, financial records showing unexplained expenditures on her personal card, and eventually, photos and audio. Because I didn't stop at digital breadcrumbs. Kevin, for a hefty fee disguised as a security consultation, provided me with miniaturized recording devices. One, disguised as a USB charger, I plugged into the cigarette lighter port in her car. Another tiny pinhole lens camera, barely larger than a screw head, I managed to install inside a non-functional air freshener clipped to her rearview mirror. It felt dirty, invasive. I didn't recognize the man I was becoming. Methodical, cold, bordering on obsessive, dangerous even. But the confirmation, the final, undeniable proof, was still coming. One evening, about 3 weeks into my silent surveillance, Dana came home radiating a kind of brittle brightness. Her smile seemed wider, almost forced. She was humming along to the radio, slightly off-key. She dropped a perfunctory kiss on my cheek before heading upstairs, claiming exhaustion from a killer spin class. Later that night, while she was in the shower, the water running, masking the sound, a notification popped up on the mirrored tablet feed from her car's system. A new message from M. Same hotel next Tuesday, 11:30. I'll bring the wine this time. You bring that black dress I like. Unless hubby's finally caught on. My heart hammered against my ribs. I watched the screen, barely breathing. 3 minutes later, while the sound of the hairdryer whirred from the bathroom, her reply appeared, typed quickly. He's clueless. Always has been. Honestly, I could probably leave for a week telling him I was at a wellness retreat, and he'd just ask if I felt centered when I got back. See you Tuesday. Can't wait. Clueless. The word echoed her restaurant confession. Puppy. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I just stared at the screen, the words burning themselves onto my memory. She thought I was clueless, oblivious, tame. She had absolutely no idea what she had awakened. I wasn't a puppy anymore. She was about to find out what happened when the wolf she never believed existed decided to bite back. The days leading up to that Tuesday felt like walking through thick, invisible syrup. Every moment stretched, distorted. Time slowed to a crawl, each tick of the clock amplifying the dread and the cold, hardening resolve within me. I went through the motions: work, meals, polite conversation. I slept beside her, the chasm between us wider than the physical space. Inside, though, I wasn't just waiting. I was rehearsing, planning every detail, every contingency of what needed to happen. Kevin had offered again. Want me to tail her Tuesday? Keep my distance. Snap what you need. You don't need to see it yourself, man. He said it like he was offering a shield, a way to spare myself the visual confirmation. No, I told him, my voice flat. I need to see it. All of it. Not out of masochism, not because I wanted to wallow in the pain, but because this wasn't just suspicion anymore. I wasn't chasing shadows. I was documenting a betrayal etched in reality. And if I didn't face the raw, ugly truth of it head on, it would fester, poison everything that came after. I needed the visceral proof, the image burned into my mind, to fuel what came next. Tuesday dawned bright and deceptively cheerful. A perfect, late spring day. Dana left the house at 11:18 a.m. She wore the black satin dress, the anniversary dress. The irony was a physical ache. She kissed my cheek, a fleeting brush of lips. Client lunch downtown, then that leadership seminar this afternoon, she chirped, grabbing her designer handbag. Might be late. Okay, drive safe, I said, handing her a travel mug of coffee I'd prepared. Tucked discreetly into the removable base, beneath a false bottom I'd fashioned, was a small, new GPS tracker, more reliable than the tablet under the seat. She wouldn't notice. She never noticed the details. She always underestimated me. That was her fatal flaw. I gave her a 15-minute head start. Then I walked out, not to my own car, but to a nondescript gray sedan parked down the street, a rental I'd booked under a burner email and prepaid credit card. In the passenger seat was a bag containing a high-resolution camera with a powerful zoom lens, binoculars, water bottles, and something heavier, wrapped in an old towel tucked underneath, a Ruger GP 100, 3.57 Magnum, my grandfather's service revolver, polished, loaded, not for them, not yet, for control, for the feeling of weight in my hand. My own hands, gripping the rental car's unfamiliar wheel, were rock steady, my breathing slow and even. Maybe I'd gone numb. Or maybe finally I'd shed the skin of the man she thought I was and become something else entirely. The tracker led me not downtown, but 30 minutes west, towards the suburbs, to a place called the Elmswood. A mid-tier boutique hotel, nice enough to feel illicit, anonymous enough to be forgettable. The kind of place with discreet side entrances and staff trained not to ask questions, especially if you paid cash or used a card under a different name. I parked across the street, partially obscured behind a delivery van making a drop at the adjacent strip mall. I adjusted my baseball cap low over my eyes and waited. She arrived minutes later, pulling her luxury SUV into a spot near the side entrance. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, touched up her lipstick, then stepped out, phone in hand, a small, anticipatory smile playing on her lips. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months, maybe years. She didn't wait long. 5 minutes later, Mark Lindley's gleaming black Tesla Model S slid silently into the red zone right by the entrance. He didn't bother parking properly, He hopped out, casual Friday attire, expensive jeans, crisp blazer, smug grin firmly in place, and met her halfway. He pulled her close, gave her a quick, proprietary kiss, right on the mouth, in broad daylight. They laughed, leaning into each other like teenagers skipping school. My gut twisted. I raised the camera. Click, click, click. High resolution. Undeniable. They walked inside, his arm slung possessively around her waist. Dana glanced back once, a fleeting, habitual movement, maybe scanning for familiar cars. I ducked lower behind the van's wing mirror. She didn't see me. Of course, she didn't. To her, I was invisible. The man she called clueless. The puppy. They stayed inside for 2 hours and 17 minutes. I know, because I timed it. I didn't move. Didn't eat. Didn't drink. Just sat there, the camera heavy in my lap, listening to the mundane sounds of the suburban street, distant lawnmowers, passing cars, chirping birds, while my world imploded in silence. I wondered how many times this had happened. How many client lunches, late meetings, Pilates sessions, work dinners had been covers for this sordid rendezvous? What hurt more than the physical act, I realized with chilling clarity, wasn't the closeness. It was the laughter, the easy intimacy, the way her whole body seemed lighter, more vibrant in his presence. She was a different woman with him, more alive, more herself. Or perhaps the self she wished she was, the woman she wasn't with me. Around 2:35 p.m. they emerged. Her hair was slightly mussed, her lipstick gone, but she looked relaxed, flushed, satisfied. He murmured something in her ear, then gave her rear a familiar casual smack as she turned towards her car. She didn't flinch, didn't object. She just giggled, a low, throaty sound, and told him to text later, when you're alone. Then they got into their separate expensive cars and drove off in opposite directions, melting back into their respectable lives like nothing had happened. Like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't follow either of them. I didn't need to. I had the images, the timestamps, the GPS data. I had the truth, stark and ugly. I drove back towards the city, not home, but to a quiet park overlooking the river. I sat on a bench, the heavy Magnum still wrapped in the towel on the passenger seat, and watched the water flow, feeling a strange, terrifying calm settle over me. The grief was still there, a hollow ache beneath my ribs, but it was being rapidly overtaken by something else. A cold, meticulous fury, a clarity I hadn't known I possessed. She thought I'd just quietly leave. She thought I was a puppy. She had underestimated the depths of the quiet man she married. She had no idea the wolf was not only awake, but sharpening its teeth. And tonight, the hunt would begin. The confrontation wouldn't be about explanation or reconciliation. It would be about consequences. It would be about control. It would be unforgettable. She came home around 6:15 p.m., carrying takeout bags from a Thai place we both liked. Didn't feel like cooking, she announced with a theatrical yawn, dropping her keys on the hall table. That seminar was brutal. Death by PowerPoint. She kicked off her heels. I was sitting in the living room, nursing a glass of bourbon, the lights dimmed. Long day? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. The longest, she sighed, sinking onto the sofa opposite me. She launched into a detailed, fabricated account of her afternoon. The annoying client who kept changing the brief, the seminar speaker with a droning voice and a slide deck from 2006. She was good. Effortlessly deceptive. Almost believable. Almost. We ate the pad thai in near silence, the clinking of forks the loudest sound. I watched her, searching her face for any flicker of guilt, any sign of the afternoon's activities. There was nothing but practiced ease. As she described the fictional seminar's Q&A session, I interrupted, keeping my tone casual, conversational. How was the Elmswood? She blinked. Just once, but it was perceptible. A micro-expression of surprise, quickly masked. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. Huh? What's that? The Elmswood Hotel? I repeated calmly. Saw a crumpled receipt in the side pocket of your car door earlier when I was looking for gum. Looked like a coffee charge from their cafe. I lied smoothly, mirroring her own ease. Oh, that place. She recovered quickly, waving a dismissive hand. Yeah, a few of us stopped there after the seminar for a quick debrief coffee. Ghastly decor, really. I think the hotel name was on the napkins or something. Must have tossed the receipt, though. Quick, confident, almost seamless, but not quite. Her eyes darted away for a split second too long. The slight flush creeping up her neck betrayed her. She thought she'd covered her tracks. She thought my question was a random observation, easily deflected. Dana had forgotten who I really was beneath the accommodating facade. She saw the puppy, placid and predictable. She hadn't yet realized the transformation occurring in the quiet shadows. The teeth were bared now, even if she couldn't see them yet. The game had changed, and I was no longer playing by her rules. The plan crystallized over the next 48 hours, cold and sharp in my mind. Revenge wasn't about shouting or breaking things. It was about dismantling their world, piece by piece, using their own arrogance against them. It would happen Friday. Dana had mentioned, almost too casually, that she'd be working late, a deadline dinner with her team. I knew, checking the discreetly mirrored texts from Mark, that it was code. He was coming over, to our house. While she assumed I'd be at my weekly poker game, a game I hadn't missed in years. Except this Friday, I wouldn't be there. Friday evening arrived thick with anticipation. I left for poker at my usual time, giving Dana a kiss goodbye, playing the part of the oblivious husband to perfection. Don't wait up, I said. Might be a late one. You too, she replied, already distracted, glancing at her phone. I didn't go to Dave's house for poker. I drove to a nearby 24-hour coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I didn't drink, and watched the live feed from the small motion-activated camera I'd hidden facing our driveway. At 8:17 p.m., Mark's Tesla pulled silently up to the curb. He didn't come to the front door. He walked around the side, towards the back patio, disappearing from the camera's view. A minute later, the feed from a second camera I'd placed inside, hidden on a bookshelf overlooking the living room, flickered to life. The patio door slid open, and Dana let him in. They embraced, a long, lingering kiss, right there in my living room. My blood turned to ice water. I gave them 30 minutes. Enough time to get comfortable. Enough time to feel secure. Then, I drove back, parking my car silently down the street. I walked up the driveway, my footsteps deliberately quiet on the pavement. My house key slid into the lock with barely a sound. Inside, soft music was playing, jazz, the kind Dana liked. Laughter drifted from the living room, his laugh, Heron intimate, carefree. I pushed the door open slowly, stepping into the dimly lit foyer. The heavy .357 Magnum was no longer wrapped in a towel. It was cold and solid in my right hand, held down low against my leg, out of immediate sight, but instantly accessible. My heart hammered, not with fear, but with a chilling electric surge of adrenaline. This was it, the point of no return. I stepped into the living room entryway. The scene froze, captured in the low light like a tableau of betrayal. Dana was curled on the sofa, laughing, wine glass in hand. Mark stood near the fireplace, swirling amber liquid, my best single malt scotch, in my favorite crystal tumbler. He turned first, mid-sentence, his easy smile vaporized, replaced by wide-eyed shock, then dawning panic. Dana, following his gaze, looked over her shoulder, her laughter dying on her lips. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then a mask of calculated indignation began to form. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, starting to rise, trying to seize control of the narrative. "I thought you were at poker." "Plans change," I said, my voice unnaturally calm, devoid of inflection. I let my gaze drift slowly from her to Mark, then back again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The sudden, terrifying shift in the atmosphere was enough. Mark took an involuntary step back, eyes darting towards the door, his hand visibly trembling, sloshing the expensive scotch. Pathetic. "Look, man," Mark stammered, trying for a bravado he clearly didn't feel. "This isn't what it looks like. Isn't it?" I took a slow step further into the room. Now they could see the tool, held loosely but purposefully at my side. Dana gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark paled, looking like he might faint or vomit. "It looks like my former boss is drinking my scotch, in my house, with my wife." "What part am I getting wrong, Mark?" "We were just talking," Dana cut in, her voice shaky but attempting firmness. "That's all?" I let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of humor. "Talking? Is that what you call it?" I gestured towards the sofa. Funny, the cameras I had installed suggest a bit more than talking. Their faces fell simultaneously. The blood drained from Dana's cheeks. Mark looked cornered, trapped. You filmed us?" Dana whispered, horrified. "Everything," I confirmed, the word hanging heavy in the air. "The hotel, the texts, the calls, tonight. Oh, especially tonight." I raised the magnum slightly, not aiming directly, but letting the polished steel catch the lamplight. The message was clear. "Now, Mark, let's talk about that puppy comment." Mark flinched as if struck. I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," I said, stepping closer to him. He shrank back against the mantelpiece. "The anniversary dinner. La Mer Rouge. You told her she married a puppy, not a wolf." My voice dropped lower, colder. "Seems you underestimated the puppy." I saw the flicker of recognition, then sheer terror in his eyes. Dana looked bewildered, then horrified, realizing I'd heard that too. "Now," I continued, my gaze sweeping over both of them, savoring their fear. "My wife seems to think I'm the type to just quietly leave, to roll over. Let's test that theory." I gestured with the magnum, a sharp, commanding flick towards the center of the room. "Both of you, on your knees." They hesitated, looking at each other, then at the magnum, then back at me. "Now!" The command cracked like a whip. They scrambled to their knees on the expensive rug, hands clasped in front of them. Dana was crying silently now, tears tracking through her makeup. Mark looked utterly broken. "You called me a puppy," I said, focusing on Dana. "Said it like it was an insult, remember?" She nodded mutely, trembling. "And you," I turned to Mark, "you agreed." I circled them slowly. "So show me. Jump, like the pathetic little lapdogs you are. Hop for me." "What?" Mark breathed, incredulous. I said, my voice was dangerously soft, "Jump!" Hesitantly at first, then with more urgency as I took another step closer, they began to hop awkwardly on their knees. A grotesque, humiliating dance of fear. Dana sobbed openly. Mark's face was a mask of shame and terror. "Pathetic," I spat, watching them for a long moment. I pulled out my phone with my free hand, thumb hovering over the record button. "Now, Mark, time for a confession. Look at the camera." He flinched, eyes wide. "Tell everyone what you've been doing. Tell them how you pursued your friend's wife. Tell them how you sat at his table, pretending to be his friend, while sleeping with her behind his back. Use your words, Mark. Let's hear that confident voice now." He stammered, choked, tried to speak. It was a mistake." "Not good enough," I snapped. "Details, Mark, or this night gets much, much worse for both of you. And trust me," I let the magnum drift slightly, meaningfully. "You don't want that." Under duress, voice cracking, he began to confess, stumbling over the words, detailing the affair, the lies, the meetings. Dana watched, horrified, as her world publicly crumbled on camera. I recorded it all, his pathetic admissions, her tear-streaked face. This wasn't about justice, it was about control, humiliation, power. When he finally trailed off, choking on his own shame, I stopped recording. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by Dana's ragged breathing. "Now," I said, the calm returning to my voice, making it even more menacing. "Get up. Slowly." They rose unsteadily to their feet. Phones, wallets, keys, on the coffee table. "Now." They complied quickly, emptying their pockets. I pocketed their phones. "You're not going anywhere," I said, gesturing towards the back door with the tool. "We're going for a drive." "Where?" Dana whispered, terrified. "Does it matter?" I replied coldly. "Get moving. You first, Mark. Dana, stay close behind him. Don't try anything stupid. Don't scream. Don't run. Because if you do—" I let the implication hang, the weight of the tool speaking for itself. "You won't like the consequences." Their eyes were wide with terror. They looked at each other, then at me, then shuffled numbly towards the patio door. I followed close behind, the Magnum a constant, chilling presence. The night air was cool as we stepped outside. No bags over their heads, no ropes, no gags. The fear in their eyes was restraint enough. The humiliation was the gag. The Magnum was the rope. I herded them around the side of the house towards my truck, parked strategically in the shadows a few houses down. "Get in the back seat," I ordered, opening the crew cab door, "and stay quiet, very quiet." They scrambled in, huddling together like frightened animals. I got behind the wheel, placed the Magnum on the passenger seat beside me, and started the engine. As I pulled away from the curb, leaving my home, my life behind, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Their terrified faces stared back. The puppy was gone. The wolf was driving. And the night was far from over. The drive was steeped in a silence more terrifying than any shouting. Dana wept quietly in the back, muffled sobs shaking her shoulders. Mark sat rigid, staring straight ahead, his face gray under the intermittent glow of streetlights. I drove automatically, heading north, away from the city, towards the sprawling state forests 40 miles out. The heavy weight of the Magnum on the seat beside me was a grim reassurance. The recorded confession on Mark's phone, now tucked in my pocket, felt like a trophy. My mind was a maelstrom of cold fury and adrenaline. Every lie, every betrayal, every whispered word I'd overheard or recorded played on a loop. Puppy, clueless, last anniversary I fake. Each memory fueled the icy resolve hardening within me. I wasn't thinking about consequences, about legality, about morality. I was operating on pure, unadulterated vengeance. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights filled my rearview mirror. My heart leapt into my throat, a jolt of pure panic momentarily cutting through the rage. A police cruiser. Crap. "Stay absolutely silent," I hissed over my shoulder, my voice low and menacing. "Not one sound, or I swear to God." I didn't need to finish the threat. They froze, eyes wide with a new layer of terror. I pulled over to the shoulder of the dark 2-lane highway, engine idling. Taking deep, calming breaths, I forced my hands to steady on the wheel. I quickly slid the Magnum under my seat, out of sight. I rolled down the window as the officer approached, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Evening, officer," I said, trying to sound calm, slightly annoyed, like any driver pulled over late at night. "License and registration, please," the officer said, his voice impassive as he shone the light briefly into the back seat, illuminating Dana's tear-streaked face and Mark's petrified expression. "You folks all right back there?" "Fine, officer," I interjected quickly, smoothly. "Just a long night, heading home after a family emergency." Dana and Mark remained utterly still, paralyzed by fear. Fear of me. Fear of the situation escalating. The officer seemed to hesitate, perhaps sensing the tension, but focused back on me. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" "No idea, officer." "You crossed the center line back there a couple of times. Everything okay? Have you been drinking tonight, sir?" "No, sir, not a drop," I lied easily. Just tired, distracted. Like I said, bit of a family issue we're dealing with. He took my license and registration back to his cruiser. The wait felt like an eternity. Every rustle of leaves, every distant car seemed amplified. In the back, Dana let out a small, choked whimper. I shot her a warning glance in the mirror. Silence. The officer returned, handing back my documents. All right, Mr. Henderson. I'm going to give you a warning this time, but you need to pay more attention to the road, especially if you're tired. Maybe pull over and rest if you need to. Yes, officer, thank you. I appreciate it, I said, relief washing over me, cold and slick. Just as he was about to step away, his radio crackled to life. An urgent voice dispatcher reported a multi-car pileup on the interstate, requesting all available units. The officer's demeanor shifted instantly. All right, folks, looks like I've got to go. Drive safe now, he said, tapping my roof twice before hurrying back to his cruiser. He sped off, sirens wailing, disappearing into the night. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Luck. Or perhaps something darker. I pulled back onto the highway, the brief flicker of hope in Dana's and Mark's eyes extinguished as I turned off the main road onto a progressively smaller, unpaved logging track a few miles later. The truck bounced violently over ruts and rocks, branches scraping against the windows. Darkness enveloped us, absolute and suffocating. Finally, deep in the woods, miles from any sign of civilization, I pulled into a small, overgrown clearing and killed the engine and the headlights. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets and Dana's renewed, terrified sobs. Everybody out, I ordered, retrieving the Magnum from under the seat. I opened the truck bed and pulled out two objects I'd placed there earlier, two sturdy, long-handled shovels. I threw them onto the damp ground at their feet. The moonlight glinted off the metal blades. What? What is this? Mark stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Get digging, I said flatly, gesturing with the Magnum towards a patch of soft earth beneath a large oak tree. Digging? Digging what? Dana cried, hysteria rising in her voice. Your graves seem appropriate, I replied, the words utterly devoid of emotion. Or maybe just one big one. Save time. Get started. They stared at the shovels, then at me, then at the dark earth, pure animal terror washing over their faces. No, please, don't do this, Mark begged, tears streaming down his face now. We're sorry. God, we're so sorry. Anything. We'll do anything. It's a little late for apologies, Mark, I said, my voice like ice. You made your choices. Dana made hers. Now pick up the shovels. Sobbing, shaking uncontrollably, they each picked up a shovel. The heavy, damp earth resisted at first, but fear is a powerful motivator. They began to dig, awkwardly, frantically, their movements jerky with terror. Dana cried continuously, muttering prayers under her breath. Mark worked in panicked silence, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I stood watching them, the Magnum held steady, the cold night air doing nothing to cool the furnace of rage inside me. The sounds of their desperate digging, the thud of shovels hitting roots, the rasp of their breathing. It was a symphony of despair, and a dark, twisted part of me savored every note. They dug for what felt like hours, though it was probably closer to 45 minutes. The hole grew wider, deeper, taking on an unmistakable shape in the moonlight. Their initial frantic energy gave way to exhausted, terrified labor. They were covered in sweat and dirt, their expensive clothes ruined, their faces streaked with tears and mud. Finally, they stopped, leaning on the shovels, gasping for air, looking up at me with pleading, broken eyes. The hole was perhaps 4 feet deep, 6 feet long. Shallow, but symbolic. But I stepped closer, standing at the edge of the pit they'd dug. Finished? I asked quietly. They nodded mutely. I looked down at them, then up at the sliver of moon filtering through the dense canopy. They say confession is good for the soul, I began, my voice taking on a strange, almost detached tone, like a priest delivering a final benediction. And repentance can lead to mercy. You've had your chance to sweat out your sins. I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting their fear peak. Kneel, at the edge. Trembling violently, they obeyed, sinking to their knees beside the hole they believed was their grave. They huddled together, crying, begging incoherently for forgiveness, for their lives. Close your eyes, I commanded softly. Pray for whatever mercy you think you deserve, from God, because you won't find any from me. They squeezed their eyes shut, tears leaking from beneath their lids, bodies shaking. Mark mumbled broken prayers. Dana just sobbed, her face buried in her hands. I raised the magnum, the heavy steel cool against my palm. The sound of the hammer clicking back echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness of the woods. They both flinched violently, whimpering. I aimed towards the dark sky, high above the trees, and fired. The roar of the .357 was deafening, splitting the night, echoing through the forest. Birds exploded from nearby trees. Dana screamed, collapsing forward. Mark yelped, cowering. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Silence returned, thicker, more absolute than before. They remained frozen, waiting for the next shot, the one that would end it. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered the tool. A strange, hollow feeling began to replace the rage. Exhaustion, maybe, or disgust. It was a joke, puppies, I said, my voice flat, weary. The sudden shift in tone made them look up, their faces masks of confusion and terror. A practical joke. Get it? They stared, uncomprehending. I don't eliminate fools like you, I continued, holstering the magnum inside my jacket. Killing you would be too easy, too quick. Living with what you've done, living with the fact that everyone could know, that's the real punishment. I kicked Mark's phone, which I'd retrieved from my pocket and tossed near the hole, towards him. There's a video on there. Your confession. Very touching. I looked from his horrified face to Dana's tear-ravaged one. If either of you ever breathes a word of this night to the police, if you try to sue me, if you even think about causing me any more trouble, that video goes wide. Family, friends, colleagues, Mark's kids, his ex-wife, Dana's parents. Everyone sees it. Your careers will be obliterated. Your reputations destroyed. You'll be pariahs. Understood? They nodded frantically, too terrified to speak. Good. I turned without another word, walked back to the truck, and climbed in. I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating their pathetic, mud-stained figures kneeling beside the hole. They looked small, broken, utterly defeated. I put the truck in gear and drove away, leaving them there in the middle of the woods, 40 miles from anywhere, without transportation, without their other phones, shivering in the dark beside the shallow mockery of a grave they had dug themselves. I didn't look back. It took Dana and Mark nearly 20 hours to walk out of the woods, stumbling onto a deserted rural road where a passing farmer eventually picked them up near dawn, bewildered by their state. The divorce was swift and brutal. Armed with irrefutable evidence of adultery and financial deceit, though not the confession video which remained my silent leverage, my lawyer ensured Dana received the bare minimum mandated by law. Mark's wife, already suspicious, filed for divorce the moment rumors, carefully seeded perhaps, reached her, using his infidelity to secure a favorable settlement. They never contacted the police. Fear and shame kept them silent. I never saw Dana or Mark again. I sold the house, quit my job, and moved across the country, seeking anonymity rather than a fresh start. The wolf had won, tearing down everything in its path. But standing alone in the quiet wreckage, the victory felt as hollow and cold as the barrel of the tool I sometimes still felt in my hand. I hadn't just destroyed their lives, I'd irrevocably altered my own soul, leaving the puppy dead in the woods alongside their dignity. The silence I craved was now filled only by the echo of that single gunshot in the dark.